Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of Alana Nicole Black's story. I am your host, Nick Harmon. On this follow-up episode to part 1, we dive headfirst into Alana's innovative drywall recycling company called Back to Earth. And we get to the bottom of why a successful business owner like Alana would even bother with a new product idea in the challenging space of drywall. We discuss how internal policy in the commercial space planted the seed for her new idea. We discuss various recycling possibilities. We talk about synthetic gypsum and also the challenges of separating out the drywall on the job site. We also talk about a unique second separation process that is paramount in her operation.
Gonna figure it out. They're still gonna throw something else in there. They're going to
push the gum wrappers in there.
I stand behind that. You need that second separation. I stand behind that.
Sure.
It simply is that people are dirty, rotten sinners saved by grace, right? That's what I believe. So
wait, slow down. Say that again. We're not to the pearl of wisdom yet, but I want to hear that clearly.
I said humanity, we're all just dirty, rotten sinners saved by grace. We're all so imperfect, and it is simply our nature. We're gonna screw up, and so you can put a little slit in there, and somebody's gonna throw their buddy's phone in there just to be an asshole. They're going to. That's just what people do.
We also talk about pricing and market strategy, and ultimately geek out on talking about product, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. Ultimately, this wrap up is an instant favorite of mine, and I hope it will be for you as well. This episode of the Drywall Podcast and all of the episodes of the Drywall Podcast in the month of May and June are brought to you by Rocket City Drywall out of Huntsville, Alabama. Not only are they contributing to the success of the Drywall Podcast, but you can listen to owner Alana Black's story on this episode 97 and also 96. Alana discusses her path to owning this thriving drywall distributor and how that path enabled her to discover a new product, which we will be discussing shortly. There's also some accolades that may or may not be worth mentioning. She was YP of the Year, Chamber of Commerce 2016, Female Entrepreneur of the Year, Women's Business Center 2018, and much, much more. Also, it may be worth mentioning that yours truly will be in Concord, Toronto at the CSR location there on June 6th, and also the Barrie location on June 7th for a special Fresco Harmony training. We'll be there all day, both days. Please come by and check it out. I'd love to meet you. But for now, Alana Nicole Black on the 97th episode of the Drywall Podcast. Let's get into it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I made it. Thank you for being patient while I dealt with updates in a general Friday morning.
There's always updates.
Always updates. And always when like you're already running a few minutes behind, and then it just wants to talk.
Yeah, we're doing an update right now with Alana Black. Once again, part 2, Back to Earth. We're getting back to the Earth on episode 97, part 2 of this Rocket City drywall journey. What'd you think of the first episode?
I listened to it last night. I tortured my husband too late at night and made him listen to it. And
It's all right.
I can't say he made it through the whole thing. It was a long day, but no, I listened to the whole thing and I think it was great. I enjoyed it. I hope I didn't sound like too much of an idiot. But I love I love the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, of course, because you're passionate. So if you didn't listen to episode 96, we discussed Alana taking over Rocket City Drywall from her grandfather, Charlie. It's a family-owned business, mom and pop, et cetera, et cetera. And as we got to the end of the episode, we started to dive into this product, back to earth, that Alana has developed using gypsum, using recycled gypsum. And so that's where we're going to take off with episode 97. Yeah, it's a conversation, and I get nervous too sometimes. And we go through our day-to-day process. Some days are up, some days are down. We've got this going on, that going on, and with a podcast, you just have to be on. And I wouldn't even necessarily say on, but there's different energy going into different podcasts, especially energy between people. It's interesting.
No, I absolutely agree. You know, I the masks we wear, or the hats we wear, I guess we should say, not the masks we wear, but the hats we wear, especially when you're an entrepreneur or you're self-employed, or even if you are just in your everyday life, you're a parent, you're a spouse, you're
Yeah.
a business owner, we have to fill all these different roles, and there's a different energy that you have to place into each one of those, and figuring out how to balance that, not bring home the work energy to the family energy, not how to bring
Yeah.
home Friday chaos into the podcast energy.
Yeah. I've heard it called compartmentalization. We have these little compartments that we put everything into, try to make sense of it all.
I've heard it as dissociation.
Disassociation?
Disassociation, yep.
Yeah. And it's healthy too, that work-life balance, very healthy. Gosh, we were getting into a little bit of which I really liked that question on the second time listening through. I really liked the question of, like, why would you get into this? What was the driving force behind coming up with or even starting to look at the tremendous waste in drywall with drywall? And you were talking about how it had to do with regulations, specifically Boeing, correct? On commercial spaces, these regulations that were put in place to start taking a look at where these commercial spaces were wasting material, I guess. Can you clarify on that a little bit? Because I really like that segue into why you, as a human, like, you started to really dig into this problem. And I like that starting point.
Yeah, so regulation might not be the right terminology. So it certainly wasn't the government that was saying you have to do this.
Sure.
It was internal policy,
Okay.
and internal policy that was looking ahead at the accountability and transparency that consumers want from their companies, and not just consumers, but investors. And so
And this wasn't on your radar at all before. And so somebody came to you, or you were reading through a document? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so actually the prime general contractors who approached me with it first, and he says, look, we're getting all this pressure. We've got to come up with a waste management plan, and we need to figure out what to do with our drywall waste, 30% of our waste. And when I started looking into it, I didn't know. I had never been posed that question before. I knew that
Yeah.
once upon a time, I heard stories that contractors would just dump all their waste out in the, neighboring lot.
Sure.
and that's how we did it.
Who
And
was this? Who was this person? What was his name and company, if you don't mind?
it was Burns McDonnell. Burns McDonnell is who was the prime general contractor at the time. And I don't know, I don't do podcasts, so hopefully they're not angry with me. This is good publicity that they were one of the early ons looking at this. And
That was the company, Burns McDonald.
that was the prime general contractor. So
Okay.
yeah, you and your typical project, I mean, most of you guys know this, but your typical project, you have your key stakeholders, your owner, your project owner. And so in this case, it would be Boeing. And then Boeing hires a general contractor to oversee the construction project. So that was Burns McDonald. And
Okay.
then Burns McDonald hires subcontractors underneath that. And so by the time we get down to our drywall contractors, sometimes we're second or third sub-tier subcontractors. So we
Okay.
might be working for a managing contractor, or, there's so many, and that's honestly how money gets depleted and how
Yeah.
risk gets increased because you get so far away from those key stakeholders.
That's why there's
But
no money left when it finally trickles down to the drywaller.
it truly is. I had always been told that the money, it was just standard, especially getting into commercial construction, that you'd have to wait 90 to 120 days for money to trickle down to finally get down to the supplier. And while that is somewhat standard practice, I mean, 60 to 90 days is probably more accurate, but it has to go from that project owner or whoever their financing partner is, and then to that prime general contractor, and then down to the subs, and then that sub
Okay.
distributes out to the labor, and then the labor pays for the materials. And so there is a long process in that. But what I found out is that a lot of that is really just manipulation, and using those sub tiers to finance the project, to serve as a bank in some ways on the project, because the money's there. The money's there from Boeing. The money's there from that prime general contractor. It is, a lot of times it's running into a robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's that you get your money on materials, but you really need to pay your labor, or you get your money on your labor, but you got to catch up on your materials. And so it's
Yeah.
just all playing catch up.
So these guys came to you and they said, Alana, we've got a big problem in the drywall sector with all of this gypsum waste. You said 30%, which if you're a drywall hanger out there, if you're in the drywall space, there's always a large dumpster full of drywall at the end of the job. And that goes somewhere. Oftentimes it goes to a landfill, which you also said is no good for the landfill because of some chemical or something. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so it goes through in the landfill process, environment where you've got a lot of organic material piled on top of each other. It goes through anaerobic digestion, so it's not getting enough oxygen. And when gypsum is in an anaerobic digestion situation with a lot of humidity and a lot of heat, it releases hydrogen sulfide into the air, which is a toxic
Weird.
emission. Mhm.
That's weird.
Yeah, and and that's what I found out. So I told the managing contractor, the primed contractor, that I didn't know about drywall recycling, but I'd look into it. And so I did. I looked into it, and I found that there weren't any options, at least not within 800 miles away. The closest option was in Denver, Pennsylvania. It was a company called USA Gypsum. You're all over the country and in Canada. Your contractors in Canada are going to say, we recycle all of our drywall. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Um, Even those in the Northeast, they typically will have theirs sent to anyone that's engaged in recycling will have theirs sent typically to USA Gypsum.
What does a typical gypsum recycling place do with the gypsum? Do they just break it down so that it makes it easier for the landfill to absorb?
No, so it turns out that it's toxic in the landfill environment, but actually it has an abundance of end market uses for beneficial reuse. And so not just recycling it to put in, you can put it back into new wall boards. So that's what Europe does. That's what Canada does. They primarily recover it. They remove the paper and adhesives off of it, grind it down to a particle size that can be reincorporated back into either closed loop recycling, so going back into the manufacturer to be wallboard again, Agriculture is the largest. That's what USA Gypsum does. But it's also used as an additive to cement products. It's used in horticulture. It's used to clarify muddy ponds. It's used in, they use it in the food industry. So if you can get it to food grade, they use it. Gypsum is added to products like bread. It's added to products like pet food as a binding agent.
Crazy. You're
It's
telling me
really
if I put a little bit of the gypsum in yours is probably a little different, but if I put a little bit of that in my pond, it might help clear it up.
not a little bit. So it actually takes quite a bit on your horticulture. But yeah, no. So what it does in your pond situation is it will bind to those dirt particles that are muddying up your water,
Okay.
and it will create a heavier, denser matter that sinks to the bottom and creates almost like a cement surface that also helps to seal leaky ponds.
Weird. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, okay. So there's a myriad of possibilities when it comes to recycling gypsum.
Mhm.
People have been recreating. Would you say that's the number one use for recycled gypsum currently is refabricating board out of the gypsum? They've figured out a way to do that, but then maybe there's all these other offshoots. How many different things, I guess, would be the question, have you discovered can be done with gypsum?
Um,
And then we'll get into why you chose the direction you chose.
100. There's It's literally it's used in so many applications. They put it in desiccant packages in the chemical industry because it absorbs water. It
What packages? Say that again.
the dessicant packages, so the
What is
ones
that?
that those are what they put into like your medicine bottle, those little or like your aspirin bottle that absorbs the
Oh,
water, so the moisture, so it doesn't go into your pills.
oh,
Uh,
that little packet of stuff in your whatever. You get the cotton, you get a little packet of stuff that's absorbing moisture so that your pills stay good.
Yeah, so that they're not so that your pills are not getting the moisture. Yeah, because you don't want the chemicals in the pills to be bonding to the water molecules in the moisture of the air. And
Okay.
yeah, so the chemical industry they use gypsum. It's used in plasters. So to back up, gypsum is calcium. Here's what I learned.
Sure.
It took me 8 years. I wasn't able to help Burns
Okay.
McDonnell or Boeing because it took me 8 years. But
That's okay.
here's what
That's okay. They inspired you.
they
That was
inspired.
that was the spark. That was the spark that you needed.
So typical drywall is 98% gypsum, 2% paper and additives or adhesives, and then the secret sauce that makes each one of the manufacturers different. Gypsum is a mineral that is either mined or it comes from synthetic. And synthetic is what's called flue gas desulfurized gypsum. So coal power plants, a lot of people are more familiar with fly ash that's put into as an additive into concrete. This is something somewhat similar. So coal power plants have a byproduct that goes up into these flutes, these tall stacks on your coal power plants, and it's essentially a calcification process that causes it to harden and shell over the inside of these flutes. And what they figured
Okay.
out is that they do a wash of these flutes, remove a sulfur content, and get it back to a chemically identical compound as mined gypsum. And so gypsum is calcium sulfate dihydrate. The synthetic gypsum that's coming out has one too many sulfur molecules. They take it off and then they get it back to calcium sulfate dihydrate. And so uh, if you ever go to your newer your last 20 years drywall manufacturers that have been built, they were built right next door to coal power plants, and there's literally little like um, lativators or escalators that are being transporting these lines that are transporting the gypsum from the
Cool.
coal power plant to the drywall manufacturer.
Okay.
So you've got mine gypsum, you've got synthetic gypsum, both
Well, so
chemically active.
we have white sands down here. Like it's like sand dunes and it's all gypsum theoretically. Is that what type of gypsum is that? It's like
So
you can slide down it and hike through these like mounds of gypsum. It's like a
yeah,
desert.
so gypsum's like a crystal. So gypsum's a hard crystal. And so yeah, it is almost like a salt or a sugar particle that then
Hmm.
combine together and form these really there. If you ever Google gypsum caves, it's really cool. You can
Okay.
see these massive gypsum crystals. It is something that we have an abundance of actually in the earth. It's expensive to mine it, and it is a natural resource, so it's not something that we want to deplete the earth from. And so I think that when they figured out that synthetic gypsum was, first of all, a very inexpensive alternative to mine gypsum, plus it was renewable, plus it was recycled. So in theory, it's coming out of these coal power plants. So you're taking
Okay.
that waste, turning it into a new product. Started as mined, and it's only in the last 50 years that they figured out, hey, we can also get this out of the coal power plants.
Okay. Interesting. So there's a myriad of things you can do with gypsum. You start going down the rabbit hole of this wasted product. You go to USA Gypsum, talk to these guys. So they are doing something that maybe piqued your interest.
Yeah, I started learning about how it could be applied in agriculture because we didn't have any plants regionally that would be interested in taking back the materials and that could financially support a recycling program because again,
Okay.
gypsum's cheap, right? So it's really an inexpensive mineral. And so I needed to find out, well, what is the higher value usage of this material? And I joined Construction Demolition Recycling Association. And for 5 or 6 years, I attended those meetings. I was the only person there that didn't actually recycle. I just wanted to learn about recycling. And so
Cool.
I attended their meetings and learned about the industry, and I started just doing research and found that there is so much academic research about the beneficial usage of gypsum in agriculture, and that there was also an abundance of information about using recycled drywall as a source for gypsum for agriculture. And I
Okay.
found that actually at Auburn University, right here in Alabama, that there was a gentleman that had done quite a bit of research on it and reached out to Auburn and said, "This is what I'm trying to do," and continued to just gain more
Who's
information and learn more and
who's
more.
who's the fellow? What's the book?
It's a white
Or no,
paper,
it's a white
really.
paper.
It's a white paper, and it's I'd have to look it up off the top of
Okay.
my head,
All right.
um, but Charles Mitchell is his name.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And
you reached out and talked to Charles Mitchell.
I did, and he had retired, and he said, "I've retired, but here's my team." And he actually
Yeah.
attended several meetings with us, and um, it turns out that the academic types really like talking about their research. And so
Yeah. Of course.
I asked him, I said, if all of this research is out here, because I was just finding so much about the beneficial use of it, why is nobody doing anything with it? And he
Why
said, well,
didn't
we can
they
write
reach
about it
out?
all day.
Why didn't they reach out to you however long
Yeah.
ago? Because you have
Yeah.
a drywall supply yard would have their thumb on the pulse of access to this gypsum. So it's interesting. So for whatever reason, you guys finally met up.
Well, and that's a good segue into really what the next part of the path was understanding if this was easy, more people would be doing it, right? If it's just crushing up drywall and putting it in the dirt, then
Yeah.
everybody would, right? And everybody's got a story about some guy that they knew that had a rig on the back of his truck, and he'd come pick up the scraps, and he'd haul it off for you, and he was attempting to grind it up and would put it in the dirt, right? So and all of those guys disappeared. And so that's one thing that I wanted to know is, well, what happened to those guys? Why didn't they work? Because that sounds like a good model to me. Just have a little grinder on the back of your truck. And so I actually found the equipment that they use, these little hauler pieces of equipment. And the manufacturer, she's out of Georgia. She actually had gone out of business during the recession. But she had a little mobile grinder that that these guys would put on the back of their pickup truck, and they would grind it up. The problem is that figuring out how to make a profitable business model out of it is really,
you gotta make money.
You got to make money, right? And so if you're just doing it as a scrapper, and then basically just dumping off as gathering up as much as you can as a scrapper, and then dumping it off as quickly as you can because you got to go scrap more. That's a really hard business model to try to sustain. And so you're always just running and chasing your tail. So I kind of understood why that model did not work. And then I started looking at other people that had attempted this, that had worked with the manufacturers to figure out, well, the manufacturers used to take back recycled boards, so why did they stop doing that? And what I found is that the biggest barriers into recycling drywall is, one of the problems is commingling of waste on the job sites. So typically people will just throw their waste into whatever general dumpster is out there. And even though we're starting to see more source separation on the job sites, we're still running into the issue that if your drywall contractor knows that's your drywall dumpster, good luck getting your electrician to care. They're still going to throw some wiring in there, right? So
it bugs me when I see the boxes. I'm like anal about the boxes. Like, I'll take the plastic out. I have one box that I fold in. I put the plastic from the mud boxes into one box, and then I break down the boxes. It keeps the job cleaner, and it recycles the boxes. I'll load them into my truck and take them home and like throw them in the recycling. It bugs me, and they take up a ton of space in the dumpster. So it's beneficial to the contractor, I think. That's a pet peeve of mine. But like, people don't care. You know, when I was in Surrey, there was a mountain of unbroken down drywall boxes, and I was doing it too because nobody gave two shits and I was in a hurry. But like, normally if I'm doing a job, like, I'll break down the boxes if I have a bunch of boxes that I'm using and take them with me.
And how many contractors, when you're dumping your scraps, are making sure that you're dumping them in a way that's in an origami puzzle so that they're lying flat, they're not, bulky and taking up a bunch of space in the drywall's, a rigid structure. So and it's big and it's bulky. And so your typical contractor, even people on my job sites with our dunnage in the past, you throw it in there and it's going to end up lopsided, and then you throw another one in there and it's going to go that way, and it's up too much space in your dumpster. So commingling of waste was a major challenge that I knew that I needed to hurdle. The other was the same thing that those smaller independents figured out, was that there's just not enough money in it. And so a lot of people believed that unless you had policy shifts, so unless you had the government saying, okay, there's going to be a landfill ban, or we're going to start penalizing companies if they don't if they don't divert their landfill waste. They did not believe that a recycling program could be successful. They also believed that you needed to see significant increases in tipping fees. So your standard C&D dumping fees at the landfill, if that's too cheap, they believe nobody would recycle. So I took that as a personal mission of, I'm Alabama. We are light on government. We don't want government telling us what is supposed to be happening in our everyday lives. So, and what we had seen and what I learned is that several municipalities had put landfill bans in, and it ultimately ended up being unsuccessful because people just started illegally dumping. So in the Northeast, if you've got
Yeah.
a landfill ban in Vermont, then you just go across the state line and go dump it over there. And
How did you get the drywall dudes to get to separate out the drywall?
so we actually we figured out that if we provided our own container at
Okay.
the of delivery of the drywall, then they and ask them, look, just make this sure this is near a window or in the garage. And so something that we can easily pick back up with our
And
equipment, same
paint
equipment
it
that we
paint it
drop the drywall
pink.
off.
Did you paint
Yeah.
it pink?
Well, no, we,
Did you
but
put like your
yeah.
logo on the side? Did you, or
Well,
are you working with like a garbage company or like a bin company to?
so we're still in we're in the final phase of our pilot right now. So
Okay.
we had to put quantifiable restrictions on what we were taking back. So we started with just 50 tons. And so 50 tons, it sounds like a lot. It's actually not very much waste. And so we started working with very select contractors that knew this is the program, this is what we're trying to do. We're
Okay.
going to these containers. We need you to put your drywall waste in these containers. And then we brought it back to our facility and we did a second separation. And that second separation ensured that there were no products that were unsuitable for agriculture. So products like your type C or exterior sheathing or chemically treated boards, anything that has more than 2% fiberglass cannot go into agriculture. Anything that's been chemically treated, your moisture resistant boards can't go into agriculture.
Ah,
So we did a second sourcing just to make sure that we could get Bubba's electrical wiring out of there that he threw in there and get the Mountain
yeah.
Dew bottles out of there.
Bubba,
And
your Mountain Dew, you guys with your bottles. That goes in, that's a different recycling program.
just come in between the walls like a normal person.
Yeah. Yeah. The urine bottles, you got to get those out of there.
I mean, it's inevitable. We actually worked with a manufacturer on a program that they took back waste and they had source separated containers. Everybody knew, they were on board, they were excited. This is something we're going to do. We're going to put our drywall in select containers and we're going to haul it back to the manufacturer. And I got to see the pictures of it, and it was like a
Yeah.
broom in there.
Mess.
There were boxes, there was wire strapping, there was just so much
Yeah.
stuff in there.
I was just thinking of an idea immediately. Like you have a container that's completely enclosed, except for like a 1 inch or 5/8 slit. You pile all your drywall, next to it. And then the only thing that can fit in is the like pieces of drywall, and then you have to put them in one at a time.
Gonna figure it out. They're still gonna throw
No
something
way.
else in there. They're going to.
Push the gum wrappers in there.
I stand behind that you need that second separation. I stand behind that.
Sure.
It simply is that people are dirty, rotten sinners saved by grace, right? That's what I believe. So
Wait,
we're all
slow down. Say that again. We're not to the pearl of wisdom yet, but I want to hear that clearly.
I said humanity, we're all just dirty, rotten sinners saved by grace. We're all so imperfect. And it is simply our nature. We're going to screw up. And so
Yeah.
you can put a little slit in there and somebody's going to throw, their buddy's phone in there just to be an asshole. They're going to,
Yeah.
that's just what people do. And so you have to have that second separation once you get it off of the
But
job site.
regardless, you've been doing this for 8 years. You figured out that the second separation is part of the process. You have the second separation. What's the next step? From your idea of I want to do something agriculturally to separating out the gypsum, maybe there's a little bit of story there that you could fill us in on. And that timetable, is that like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, no, the first couple of years was research. The next
Okay.
couple of was, okay, I've got to build a plant and I've got to raise millions of dollars to build a plant.
Okay.
And actually had been communicating through LinkedIn actually with a plant manufacturer out of Italy. and company name was Eco Avant-Garde, and really just wonderful people. And they had a small footprint manufacturing facility, recycling facility that was small enough to go into an urban design. So, it's got a 10 to 12,000 square foot footprint.
Okay.
And it was what was considered a microprocessor, so only processing up to 10,000 tons per year, versus a USA Gypsum that can do that easily in a month. And so I was really intrigued by the idea of regional small batch recycling.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really where I started to
You're
diversify.
you're pioneering. You're
Well,
pioneering
not
something.
pioneering. Well, I don't know about pioneering, but I mean, that's what they do in Europe. And because it just makes sense. It was also, I saw other companies were going towards this hub recycling effort. Pepsi company is one of those
Okay.
that realized you can't try to collect all the plastic in the country and bring it back to 4 facilities, that you lose a lot of your value in that transportation. And so
Okay.
focusing on hubs, smaller central locations that are regional to that effort, that's really what intrigued me. And
Okay.
so I started to try to figure out, is there a business model where I'm essentially just taking back the waste that I'm producing? And so taking accountability, responsibility for the waste that I'm producing and introducing into the market
Smart.
space.
Yeah.
And then also utilizing that existing network between the manufacturers, the distributor, and the drywall contractor. So we've already got those relationships. They're already
Yeah.
calling to go do a finish up or a credit. It's no big deal for them to call me and say, "Hey, come pick up this crate. We've got your scraps ready."
Yep.
And so figuring out how to enhance the value of that existing network, not recreate anything.
What's the
And
incentive for those guys to give you the board back? Or are they just doing it just to help
there
out?
there there's at this point there's not an incentive for it. And
Cool.
so because again, those drywall contractors, they don't have the time, energy to care about recycling in
You
that
think
capacity.
the contractor would give you a little kickback or like some incentive because you're keeping that out of his dumpster or her
The
dumpster?
incentive really goes up for that prime contractor. Yeah, the incentive goes
Yeah, yeah.
the guy that's paying for your dumpster,
Right.
the project owner that has their sustainability goals. That's where the incentive comes in, and that's really
Okay.
where the focus is. Um, on the on so we back up, we actually went to Europe. We went to Italy and met with these guys in 2021. I hired a gentleman by the name of John Dupes to come in as my executive vice president, and so he came in and really transformed a lot of things that we were doing in the business. That was a key moment for my business, was bringing in somebody that had the professional experience to be able to manage my day-to-day operations at Rocket City Drywall,
Okay.
while I was out here in dream world about recycling. And
Yeah.
then also how to really push forward this vision that I've got of, I want to see us bringing back wasteboard, recycling it, and retailing it back into our region. And so we packed up and went to Europe in 2021 and looked at the plant. And it was still, the plant that we saw was still in its infancy, so we weren't able to see it in full operation at the time. Came back, started trying to figure out how in the heck are we going to fund this thing. And
Yeah.
that was 3 years in itself of who's gonna be the key players in this. So is it going to be a manufacturer? Is it going to be a contractor? Is it going to be a a manufactured housing contractor? Who's it going to be? And there was a lot of interest, and there was a lot of time and energy spent on trying to figure out what type of collaborative partnerships we would take on. And no, Back to Earth Gypsum came down to one day me saying, I'm tired of all of these meetings and it not going anywhere. I'm creating a product that's going to be called Back to Earth Gypsum, and I'm going to go sell it in the markets.
I love that. And you're like, you're sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to do that. You have to be like, let's shit or get off the pot. Like, what are we doing here? Are we going to spin our wheels for 20 years, or is there something viable here? Otherwise, what's the point? I got a business to run, you know?
And that is the difference between big business and small business. So that is the why we have to keep our small businesses alive, because the small businesses are the only ones that have the capacity to have that innovation, so that entrepreneurship. The big businesses, they're machines. They're well-run machines.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. I don't have any hate for the larger businesses, not at
right.
all. I don't agree with some of their business practices, but I think that they play an important role in our economy. But
Hmm.
the small business does as well. And
Yeah,
so, whereas they have a committee that has to form a committee that has to get approval, that has to do, you
yeah.
just can't function
But
the way that
you don't
executive,
have a green thumb. You don't care about growing plants. Why in the world would you choose agriculture?
because it had the highest value.
Okay, it had best margin, probably.
Had the best margins on it.
Okay,
And for the quantity that we would be processing. So if we were to only process 10,000 tons a year, um, agriculture was the best option for that,
okay,
because 10,000 tons a year doesn't put a dent in what manufacturing needs for new wallboard. It doesn't put a dent in what your cement or concrete people need. It
right,
just
right.
it was the most accessible lane, and it had been proven out. It had been proven out through
Okay,
all of search, and the company USA Gypsum that has been doing it since the 90s. There was also another company called Gypsoil that had been do it. We've used gypsum in agriculture. It's one of the oldest soil amendments that we've used in agriculture. So it's used heavily in commercial agriculture.
okay.
The difference was is that the larger companies were going directly to the mines and introducing it to large agriculture. So big volume models. How do we, again, get it at the cheapest price, sell it as fast as we can at the cheapest price?
Yeah,
Even on the recycled gypsum, he has what I learned from the facilities that were in operation is that one of the other key barriers was that balance between your inflows of recycled content and your outflow of where your end market is. And so to say that more simply, if you collect a lot of waste and you've processed it, and now you've got a lot of waste on your hands that you've got to figure out what to do with. And so the fastest, easiest way to do that is to find a large buyer, right? And so that large buyer is your commercial agriculture. So now they're buying all your gypsum, they're excited to have it. Well, maybe the next year construction's down and you've created this beast of agriculture, and you can't get enough drywall. And so
okay.
now you're having to collect from multiple sources and your quality goes down, and
Are you
you
targeting local, commercial, larger agricultural, people? No, you're going smaller.
I'm going straight to what would be considered a boutique market. So
Okay,
hobby gardeners, your
okay.
grandma that does 6 tomato plants every single year, your your housewife.
Is this a product that we could get into our good friends over at Home Depot's shelves,
Yeah, potentially. So
like the
again, we're on the last.
garden centers?
So where we are on this project now, and I'll still call it a project because I'm still proving it out. Where we are on the project now is that we have collected 50 tons of clean construction waste, source separated clean construction waste. So
Okay.
we've proven out that using networks that we can collect that waste in a capacity that can then be recycled. We have recycled 50 tons of waste through a third party. So we found a regional processor that was able to separate that paper off and the adhesives off of it and get it ground back to a particle size that is capable of going back into agriculture. So this final phase is the retail phase. And the retail
Yeah.
phase, I mean, it sounds crazy, but literally through the next 3 months of this project is me at farmers market selling 50 tons, 1 pound at a time. But I have to start that way
That's how
because
you
I
have
need
to do it.
I need consumer feedback.
Yes.
I've got compostable packaging, right? So I couldn't create more waste while trying to divert waste. So I've got compostable packaging and compostable labels, but I'm
Neat.
learning things like that packaging isn't very shelf stable. It starts to wrinkle. It doesn't look as nice on the shelf.
Uh,
So,
I don't
well,
know.
I'm getting
So,
consumer feedback now from the people that are buying it. Things like, okay, their bag really did compost. They put it in their compost, and within 2 weeks, it was gone.
but you're saying these bags are made to decompose
Break down
in
to decompose.
the compost after they get done spreading it wherever. Let's talk. Okay, so you go through the painstaking process of gathering the recycled gypsum. You do the two-part separation. That product then goes to a factory where it's distilled down into a powder, I presume, some type of powder. It comes back to you. There's all that upfront expense. Now Alana has the product. Now you have to package the product. Then the thing that people I think forget about the most is you got to sell the shit. It's one thing to have an idea. It's a whole different set of challenges to sell a product, as you and I both know. And one at a time, though. I think that's smart. Keep overhead low because you also have to do proof of concept. So what are some of the early feedback that you're getting from some of these shows, as exciting as it is? Um, what are people saying about it? Are they liking it? And is it working in the soil? Is it helping the plants
Yeah.
grow?
No, oh, it's incredible. I'll send you some pictures, or if y'all go on our Facebook, Back to Earth Gypsum on our Facebook, there's pictures of it's so cool. I've been running science experiments in our office, and so we have planted 46 tomato plants in buckets, and we're running various experiments on with gypsum, without gypsum, with various amounts of gypsum. And that's in itself is really cool. But we also started putting tomato plants in glass containers. And so what's so interesting is that you can sprinkle this on the surface of the dirt because it's got that hard crystal structure. When you put it on the surface of the dirt, water it, it's going to penetrate down into the soil and then recrystallize. And so over about a 2 week period, we're able to see where it continues to work its way through the soil and start stratifying the soil. So you see these layers of gypsum starting to produce down through the soil. And what that does is that provides better irrigation. So
Okay.
especially here in Alabama, where we've got dense red clay soil, that is super important for our agriculture in Alabama because when you have dense red clay soil, you can't get water penetrated through and you can't get oxygen penetrated through. So it actually adds to aeration as well.
Are you pulling in like is it Auburn University? Just where they got six plants that don't have the back to earth product, and then you have six plants that do have the back to earth product.
Yeah, so it turned out that the extension, so our Alabama Extension Office is supported, supports local farmers and regional farmers. It's run by Alabama A&M and Auburn University, and it turns out that they've been recommending gypsum for decades. So they know we use it in all of our
Beautiful.
commercial agriculture. And so they even have these little pamphlets that on their recommendation of if you're going to plant a tomato plant in a 5 gallon bucket, they tell you to use a quarter cup of fertilizer and a half cup of gypsum in it. And so we didn't need them to do the testing. They've already done all of the testing. I'm doing my own testing for my own marketing, pictures,
Sure.
visuals, understand the
Yeah.
process because I'm not a gardener. So I want to be able to see it and understand it better for myself.
Well, and
Um,
I assume you would have a vision for a larger consumer, like some of the larger farms where it's like you're sending 100-pound pallets out of this stuff out so that they can be like, incorporating it into large form agriculture.
Yes and no. I mean, my vision for this really is to remain in that small batch boutique space. And
Okay.
so we want to remain in under 50 pounds. And so
Okay.
that really is your backyard gardener, your hobby gardener. I never want to get into a situation where I can't control the quality of the materials that's coming in. And so um, the companies that are doing this and doing this well, they don't have to go through as laborious of a process to keep source separation out. Really, they've got the benefit of volume working in their hands. So if a piece of chemically treated board ends up thrown in there, well, it's going to dissipate volume and numbers. It will be such a small fraction of what actually gets in there. And so with that, it really is less of a risk than my little itty bitty operation.
Yeah.
and and also it's 1 ton per acre. So in the grand scheme, 10,000 acres, that's 10,000 tons a year would be my ultimate goal. That's only 10,000 acres. That's not a very big farm,
Okay.
or very many farms. And so really
Okay.
that's batch is our focus.
And then you're saying your competition theoretically is just getting the gypsum and using it. They're not going through the recycling step.
The only USA gypsum is
Only
currently.
USA. Okay. Okay. Neat. And it's definitely fun to sell a boutique product.
You know, I'm watching women spend not just women, but people, consumers are spending $400 on houseplants, and they're treating them like beanie babies. And oh, I just found this rare houseplant and I'm so excited. Right? I'm not going to ask you what you spent on it, but
I've had that guy for a long time. I've got some vines and some other ones, but I've got they're good for oxygen in your space. Good feng
yeah.
shui also, I might add.
So you probably wouldn't think twice about spending $5 on a half-pound bag that's got, a cup worth of gypsum in there essentially, and that
No.
you're going to sprinkle 1 to 2 tablespoons on your house plants.
No,
That's
I
not
already want a
hard.
bag. Forget about it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be giving away bags this month on the Drywall Podcast. I'm gonna do an ice bath, and we're gonna do back to earth gypsum giveaway on the Drywall Podcast.
No,
Done.
I mean, it really is exciting. I mean, we know anecdotally, look, I'm married to a drywall contractor, second generation drywall contractor, and Randall, my husband, and he's been a huge supporter through all of this. He's been here through the beginning of the idea and the concept. And so
You gotta have that support from your partner, man. It's
I couldn't
so
have done
key
this
because
without
it's and all things considered, it's a ridiculous idea. You're making money. You got Rocket City Drywall. You got your formula. Have you had people coming to you because it's been a while now, like you're wasting your time. Why are you doing this, man? Let somebody else deal with all this crap.
Yeah, I mean, I get both. I get people that see it, get it, understand it, and are like, this could be bigger than the distribution side of it. Like, this is really an
Okay.
exciting idea. And really that understand the business model of trying to sell a product, be able to collect its waste and retail its waste. And so being able to extend the value of the original product. That's what I'm trying to do. And so when you see
Yeah.
that, that makes and keep it out of the landfill. That's a
Okay.
win for everybody. And so
Yeah.
when you see a business model that is a win for everybody, there are people that get really excited about that.
Yeah.
But when you talk to a drywall supplier that it has 1,000 locations across the United States, and you tell them, hey, we want you to start collecting your waste, and we want you to build a recycling center, they don't have the energy for that. They can't, they're trying to run their machine. They can't do that. And so
Yeah.
there are people that think that it's crazy, but overall and overwhelmingly, it just makes sense that this product generates so much waste. It doesn't belong in the landfill, and it's got huge beneficial reuse in markets. It just makes sense. We need to be recycling it.
Okay, so the more you go down the rabbit hole of waste management with when it as it pertains to gypsum, I feel like the more you become aware of not only the problem, and I mean maybe it was Burns McDonald who planted the seed, but this seed has grown, to use the agriculture analogy. I guess what's the biggest thing that you've learned as you go into the retail side of this, just challenges and what has what has shifted for you, I guess, around the product and marketing the product? Because marketing a product is not running a drywall supply yard. That is a different, you are developing a product. That is a different animal than
Mhm.
running a store, you know? So I just want to know, I'm getting to the question, like, what's the takeaway from that experience that I guess has helped you grow?
Even before the product side, one of the things that I've learned is that I am very much so not alone in this endeavor. And so it takes a lot of support to get a product out there, to follow a dream for this many years. It takes a lot of support. And so I've had support from my employees, I've had support from my manufacturers, and probably the coolest thing is that as a family business, it has brought our family closer. Since I've started this, my brother-in-law has come into the business. My sister has come. She's recently come back in and has been a tremendous support. They're going out with me to markets, and they're rallying behind me. And so that support, my husband, like we said, my children, them seeing this, all of that is just um, new and exciting. And I
Yeah.
can't be grateful for the people that have rallied behind and supported this. On the actual product side, I just have to, I think that the biggest challenge is going to be staying true on course. I know that there's distributors that are ready to that would put this product out into their market space. I also know that the small batch market has not been developed enough that if you put it into a retailer space, it's probably going to sit there. It's not going to move very quickly for them. And so we have to build brand recognition. We have to educate the consumer. We have to figure out a way to get more product details out to the consumer so that they are familiar, they're looking for it, they're talking about it. Um, I'm learning, we talked about on the last show the use of social media, and I've joined every single farmers group across social media.
Smart. Yeah.
And now especially focused on Alabama, but it was so
And
cool.
are you selling online?
So we're developing the website now so that we can sell.
Okay, that's going to be big.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to focus as much of a regional development as possible. I'd like to have it in regional distribution as much as possible. But no, we want to be able to have a retail space as well.
Yeah. I mean,
So
the
online.
retail's good. And I never like to like sort of compete with my retailers with Fresco Harmony, but online sales, it's just like you can sell everywhere.
People want to be able to buy it.
Yeah.
And even people at the markets that I'm going to, they are like, can I buy this online? And
Yeah.
so
You have to.
they like to have that space. So we're developing that website now to where there's an e-commerce side to it. Um, the it's tempting to try to start unloading this in larger volume and a lower price. But the truth is that if I'm able to prove out a boutique segment, then that, if I can support an operation on 50 tons in a boutique segment, then I could spend the rest of that energy into getting it back in the manufacturer's hand to go back into recycled wallboard. And so we'd really like to have a small segment in the boutique sector. That's where I'm trying to prove out. And that larger segment going back to an ideal recycled process where drywall becomes drywall becomes drywall becomes drywall. So that's the ideal recycling, that infinite loop, closed loop recycling model. It's just
Cool.
not affordable. It's just
Yeah.
drywall's too cheap, and
It's
so you
cheap.
can't sell it and have a very sustainable model exclusively going into ideal recycling.
Do you enjoy going to the boutiques and hanging
I
out and talking to the talking to the people? Like the farmers
I,
markets are fun to hang out with anyways.
I had to remind myself that that I was there to sell stuff, that I wasn't just there to give science lessons and talk to people. I was so excited that I'm finally bringing a product to market. I finally got something in hand, and now I can tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
And it is. It's a lot of fun.
How
It takes
long
a lot of energy.
how long has this been on the market now?
So we got our fertilizer license last month. So we
Oh
just
my
launched
God.
product. So we're just in the product launch segment of this. Yeah. So I mean,
That's awesome.
50 tons, Alana, 1 pound at a time, half pound at a time.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
But people, it's fun. I was at a market last night. We didn't get home till late because we're doing a market, but I've got one tonight and I've got one tomorrow. So we're trying to push this as hard as we can. But there was a gentleman yesterday that, bless his heart, he was an older gentleman. He was an old drywall contractor, and I don't know if the elderly drywall contractors in your area are the same as mine, but they're so grumpy. And the world is just, gone to shit, and
Yeah.
everything is terrible, and
Yeah.
the materials terrible, the industry, everything's terrible.
Yeah.
And I talked to him for probably 30 minutes, and just was able to remind him that there are good people doing good things,
Yeah.
and that there is still light. And so being able to spread that light is what makes a lot of this fun too. It's not the same old monotony. It's not the same old business. It's just trying to do something good. And that in itself is rewarding.
People think it's about the money. I was listening to, I get these, self-help sort of, I get a lot of like Steve Jobs will pop up, his little sayings, but he's like talking about being an entrepreneur. And he's like, it's so hard that anybody that's ever become successful, you really have to be passionate about what you do because it's so hard that no sane person would last. They would quit, and they do quit. The people that are successful are the people that really enjoy, what they do and the challenges. And it's so true. I mean, I have people that are like, "Oh, your idea is worth $1 million," and it's like, well, go try selling a product, man. It's really, especially in drywall, it's like you're talking about these dinosaurs that are like super resistant to change. It's like, when I first started Fresco Harmony, I thought that I had to keep it secret because it was such a great idea that someone would steal it and go and start doing it. And the reality is, like, the people that are using it love it. And it's a slow progression, but man, I have to like bombard them with information. It's
Mhm.
like they could care less. Head down, move forward. I don't want to try anything new. I'm making money doing it this way. And it's the same that you come into contact with these larger gypsum plants. It's like, don't bother me with that. We've got our bottom line. We don't want to change. It's too much work. And I think you miss out. I think you
Well,
miss
the
out.
fun thing about being with this from its inception is that it has shifted even just in the 8 years that I've been doing it. And so there have been
Yeah.
people that are moving the needle forward. There's a great woman named Amanda Kaminsky that I met that is out of New York. She started a group called Building Product Ecosystems, and she ran a project with the Durst Group, one of the largest developers in the country. And they recycled their drywall and their glass. And then she started a coalition to try to start encouraging more drywall and glass recycling across the construction industry. And I was able to participate with that during the very early years. And it was so fun watching. The manufacturers are talking about it. The manufacturers do care about it. They know that
Good.
they do not have an infinite timeline to do nothing about their waste. If you pay attention to what's happening globally, there's what's called extended producers responsibility, where global governments are putting actual restrictions and penalties on companies that are basically saying if your company is creating waste, you have a fiduciary, a financial obligation to minimize that waste and to fund other people that are trying to minimize that
Okay.
waste.
All right.
They know it's coming. These companies are big. They know it's coming. They're already dealing with it in other countries. And so they are having conversations. On top of that, coal power
Cool.
plants are going away. So synthetic
Yep.
gypsum is away. And so they've got to start going back to mine gypsum and other sources. So it's on the forefront of their mind.
Okay.
And it's been fun to watch it go from a casual conversation, us getting together monthly, trying to figure out how few handful of us, you've got the government of New York, you've got New York City, you've got some folks out in California, you've got the manufacturers, and then you got little Rocket City Drywall hanging out, trying to figure out how we
Of
fix
course.
this.
Yeah,
And
so it's cool. You're getting this exposure, creating these relationships and networks on a larger scale than you would have if Back to Earth wasn't there. You are creating brand awareness for your existing business. All of these weird side benefits of doing something that is worthwhile are coming to you inadvertently. And I think that's what happens when you stumble onto something that you're passionate about and following would you say that this is something that you were searching for intrinsically and maybe you didn't know that you were searching for?
absolutely. I
Like it's
think
given you
that
purpose.
given purpose, if I were to die tomorrow, and this never got completed. If I were to not be successful with this pilot and had to start over or had to look at a different way, all of it's been worth it. All of it
Yeah.
has been fulfilling. It's been hard work. But every single day I got up and tried to do something different and something better. And so I was never stuck. And that to me makes it easier to get out of bed every day.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. The so going into maybe a pearl of wisdom surrounding what you've learned with this, and you said I think 8 years, right? You've been working on Back to Earth. You have two sizes now currently, correct?
Yeah, we're doing a ½ pound and a £1 bag. It's 1/2 cup per square foot. So there's 2 plants worth or 2 square feet worth in a ½ pound and 4 square feet worth in a £1. We are expanding into a 10 pound, 30 pound, and 50 pound option. I'm
Oh,
working on
okay.
packaging for that. So if
Yeah.
you or anybody else has some ideas on packaging, again, I don't want to create a whole lot of waste as I do this, but so we're looking at possibly like if we did like buckets, we would do like a take back program where you bring back your bucket and we give you a new one. And
Yeah,
it's
or you
something.
package it into a water can.
Package it into a water. It's something. Yeah. Yeah. It's and so I haven't watched those products yet because I really want to find a good way to do it, a unique way
Yeah.
to do it. So but we are working on it. We know that the consumers want it. So it's 9 pounds for a 10 by 10 garden is how much you need. And so
Okay.
that 10 pound option would really be ideal for it.
Okay.
Uh I
So
lost
we
my train.
get I get a small amount of product from you. I just take that product and I sprinkle it because I'm thinking like we're in spring here. Gardens are just starting to flourish, man. Now is the time to buy Back to Earth and
Yeah.
I just take it and you have X amount. You said 1 pound
One half cup per square foot. So like
per
a
square
tomato
foot.
plant, you typically plant one tomato plant in a square foot. And so
Right.
that 1/2 cup would be per tomato plant.
Okay.
But say peppers where you can do 2 plants in a square foot, you would still only use 1/2 cup and put a 1/4 cup on each of your plants.
Okay.
And so you put it on the soil just around your plant, you water it down well. Your house plants is actually just 1 to 2 tablespoons. Sprinkle it on the
Yeah.
soil, water it down. The watering is the key. You've got to start getting it penetrated. You're going to see it sit on the surface for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's not penetrating through. It is penetrating through. It just takes a couple of weeks for all of those molecules to
Yep.
work their way down.
So you do it,
Um,
you put it on and then just water regularly. I water like once a week or whatever, and eventually like it slowly penetrates down into your plants.
It adds calcium and sulfur, and so calcium is essential for pretty much all plants. Similar to lime, so people use lime a lot in their gardening. It
Okay.
does not replace lime though, because lime actually impacts your pH on your agriculture, in your soil, and gypsum does not. It's pH neutral, so it's not going to raise or lower the pH of the soil.
Okay.
Calcium deficiencies cause problems like blossom end rot on your tomatoes. So if you're ever growing tomatoes and they start to harden or rot on that bottom part of the tomato, that's called blossom end rot, and that's typically due to a calcium deficiency.
Huh.
Yeah, it enhances other nutrients that you put in the soil. So if you use a fertilizer that's typically adding nitrogen and phosphorus into your soil, the gypsum molecule will bind to that nitrogen and phosphorus. And because it is a stable crystal structure, it will actually slowly release the nitrogen and phosphorus back to the root systems, instead of having so much wash away.
Creates balance.
Hmm.
I like it. I like it. Pearl of wisdom. What do you got?
I have something different. It is the 8-year anniversary of an anonymous letter that I got. And
Okay.
so I thought I would read this to you.
Yes.
This was a letter that I got written to me and mailed on an unmarked envelope, no return address, and it was typed. The address to me was typed, and you can't tell who wrote it, right? So an
Love it.
anonymous letter that was sent
Love
to
it.
me. All right.
Not a
It
death threat.
says, it says, Hi, Alana. I thought it was finally time for someone to give you a different perspective. Just cut back. This is my first year. I had just bought the business.
Okay.
Never in my long executive career, true executive, have I come across someone like you that is so self-promoting, has a bigger need to be seen as heroic, and is so disingenuous as you in how you describe yourself and how you utterly wonderful you purport yourself to be. A 26-year-old that did such a stupendous job of turning around a very small business that sells commodities? Really? That's a swipe at people that have turned around large public companies through executing more ability and know-how than you'll ever have with the same title you claim, and who really do have educated, experienced executives working as direct reports. A small drywall company doesn't need a CEO when there aren't really any true executives in the company, including you. Also, get off the Chamber of Commerce. You serve very well to dilute the qualifications and standing of others that contribute immensely more to the business community than you ever will. Your self-promotion is shameless. Lesser people have done much more for society without the obvious need to be personally adored and worshiped in business. A true leader has no need for personal credit or the need to tell their story and over and over and over. Posting price increase letters on LinkedIn? Really? Who do you think really cares other than you? Your proclaimed efforts outside of your business are, in reality, for personal and disingenuous recognition. Nobody cares that you are a woman in business. Nobody cares that you own a company. And nobody cares much at all about who you think you are. You would serve yourself and others by not being disingenuous and just quietly running your business. If you need, if you read this far, I'm surprised. Think about it. Your personal values are misplaced. Learn to be genuine, look people in the eye, and then look at yourself. I think that would be difficult for you to do until you learn what humble means. Yours truly, a friend. So that was sent to me anonymously. And so my words of wisdom are, it's there are going to be critics out there. There are going to be people that are jerks out there. There are going to be people that try to tear you down and tell you that you're worthless, that you are disingenuous, that you
Yeah.
just need to sit down and be quiet.
I don't want to offend anybody, but have some balls and sign it.
They
If you're
put
gonna
yeah, they put an illegible signature on there, an illegible, so you can't read it. You don't know what it says. But you
whatever.
know, I see women out there, especially female contractors, and I see some of the language and the hate that they're getting.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're just showing off. They're, looking for attention, and
Yeah,
I just want people.
I get jealous. I get
Yeah,
jealous at all the damn likes, you know. Um, and we talk about it on when I have females on the Drywall podcast.
well, my words of wisdom are to those women: keep telling your story. Do not sit down. Do not be quiet. Do not make your light smaller to make somebody else feel more comfortable. And so they're doing good work out there, and
Mm,
they're promoting the industry. And so I want to encourage not just women, men too, men that are told that, this craft is not something to be proud of. We all have something to be proud of. We all have part of what I love about this podcast is people telling their stories. And
hmm.
so I want people to keep telling their stories, because it's those stories that brings humanity back into the industry and back into the trades. And so I just want to be encouraging on that.
I
And
love
then
it. Love it.
my last words of wisdom, last words are, yeah, this is my one highlight, my biggest highlight in my career. So this was quoted by Inc. magazine from me, but my grandfather taught me that you win business one of two ways, either being the best or being the cheapest. And my grandmother taught me that a lady is never cheap. So there you go.
Of course not. I like it. Alana Black, uh, Rocket City Drywall, back to earth gypsum products, uh, mogul, I would say, in the drywall space. I met you at in Tex, I think AWCI 23. But we had known each other for a long time. You're always in the forefront of the industry, never shy away from your accolade, despite what this anonymous character had to say. You know, I think that. Oh, and I could end it on. It reminds me of a Marianne Williamson quote. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate; it's that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous, and gorgeous? Who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one of us. And as we let our light shine, our presence automatically gives others permission to do the same.
Oh, that
So,
makes me tear up a little bit. I love that so much.
I heard that that's actually in a book. Marianne Williamson, who's actually a presidential candidate, mind you, running independently, wrote a book called Return to Love, and it's in there. And yeah, it's been
I'm
my
adding that on my list today. I
yeah,
absolutely.
it's been my guiding light. She's unreal. Like, and
Mhm.
imagine having the courage to, and I follow her on Instagram, and I mean, she's amazing. Imagine having the courage to run for president. So, what she must endure as an
Terrible
independent,
job.
as an independent.
Because I think farmers markets are tough, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, just, following your passion and man, just yeah, letting your light shine. Sometimes you're gonna as you are illuminated, like you're gonna get that feedback and that criticism. But man, there's no other way to live life, I don't think, you know.
I don't either. And
So
there's enough. I wish more people lived like that. I mean, there's enough for everybody. It's not it's not it doesn't have to be a competition. It can be, we can all be eliminating one another.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So thank you so much. Part two, home run. I mean, I do want to get some product. Rocket City Drywall has been kind enough to sponsor the month of May on the Drywall Podcast too. We appreciate your support. And yeah, let's get some product to give away. We could do like ice bath giveaway or whatever for some of this product. I wanted to get photos and stuff of Back to Earth because I love products and new products, and especially products in the drywall space that are new. So congratulations for that. This is a difficult space to innovate in, I think. And, you're doing that. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I've enjoyed this. I hope you have me back someday.
Yeah, we should do a check back in I can't believe your product's only been out for a month, so that's awesome. I definitely want to check back and see how it's doing over time. And yeah, maybe you'll have a booth at the AWCI selling that'd be sweet.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I can't wait to be able to come on here and say, if you have a project in Huntsville that has sustainability goals, call me, because I'm going to take back your drywall and I'm going to process it and I'm going to put it back for beneficial reuse. I'm going to get it out of the landfill. That's one day I'm going to be able to do that. One day soon, I hope.
I'm sure you will. Alana Black, thank you so much for being on the Drywall Podcast today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. We will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye. Huge shout out to Alana for being with us on the Drywall Podcast today. Not many women can say that they learned to drive behind the wheel of a forklift at 8 years old, but Alana can. And that's just one of many skills she's learned from her grandfather at Rocket City Drywall. She has owned this mom and pop supply yard in Huntsville, Alabama since 2016 and has dedicated her life to preserving the legacy of her family business. Serving residential and commercial construction, she promotes old school business values while pushing her industry to be ever growing in innovation and quality. As you've just heard, she reminds us to never underestimate the little giants. Look for Back to Earth and Rocket City Drywall on your favorite social media platforms. If you have questions about Alana's products or Rocket City Drywall, you can reach out to me directly at info@frescoharmony.com. Thank you so much for joining us on the 97th episode of the Drywall Podcast today. I really, really, really appreciate it. And I hope you all have an amazing weekend this weekend. And remember, keep drywalling.